Hi, I'm Billi Maddox and this is Bookbinding Basics Part 2. Today we're going to be covering the basic tools of the trade. If you'll look down here on the table, I've expertly arranged here, our sort of basic set of tools. I'm just gonna go over them quickly left to right and then we'll go in depth. Scissors, bone folder, awl, clamps, headband, optional, pencil, ruler, white glue. This is sort of a white Elmer's glue, like a crafts glue. Tape, bookbinding thread, needles, glue stick, weights, stapler, and another optional here is a rounded corner punch. So now let's get into these a little more in depth. Now scissors is fairly obvious. You're always gonna sort of be cutting materials, papers and whatnot, and sometimes you need scissors, but also sometimes you need a hobby knife or an X-Acto knife, especially when you're cutting book boards and things like that, which I will show you a little bit later. I didn't really include this in here, and I'm not sure why. I'm just remembering that you might need one of these. Actually, maybe use this a bit more than I use the scissors, so let's just addendum, we'll put it right here on the end. So, bone folder. Now this is an interesting thing. This is actually made from bone. This is used when you're folding papers so that you get a really crisp edge. This could also be achieved with a nail, of course, with a thumbnail or the nails on your fingers, thumbnail or the nails on your fingers. Your nails, your fingernails. You can also achieve this with your fingernails. But a bone folder is kind of a traditional kind of tool. I have one because of tradition. I also have an awl here, which has a little bit of something on here. You're gonna be needing to sort of poke holes in things. You'll see that, you have to poke holes through the pages in order to get your staples through or thread through. That could also be achieved with needles, which are right over here. These are heavy duty size 3 needles that I keep. Now this is sort of more of a symbolic thing. Clamps. You'll need to clamp down certain things, especially if you're gluing a bind together. This actually should be in concert with weights as well. Weights is another good thing. Sometimes I use just heavy books just to sort of get things clamped down. There's also a thing called a book press that could be easily made. I actually have the materials right here off to the side to make one, and that might be a future episode. You're gonna need some sort of writing utensil. I like using a pencil, although sometimes there are applications for pen as well. A ruler of various sizes. You're gonna need bigger ones for when you're cutting book board or large sheets of paper. Metal is preferable. You're using really sharp tools, so if you're using wood or plastic, it's gonna cut into there, so I tend to like to use metal. All-purpose white glue. Now this is just an Elmer's glue, just a different kind of bottle. I know it looks a little different, but this is just regular white Elmer's glue. Preferably try to get something that's acid-free and won't eat up or discolor your papers. Needles I just went over. You use these with thread here. This is a heavy-duty thread. I've also used embroidery floss, which is also sort of heavier, but a bit softer to the touch. Anything that's thick is good to use in bookbinding, and these needles are pretty substantial. They're kind of big old needles here. Sometimes in place of white glue, you'll want to use a glue stick. There are certain applications where you just want to sort of glue something on really quick. Your weights here, staples also, like in my office supply notebook video, staples were used to bind it. Staples are a staple in binding. So also tape, holding things together, using it as a finisher, any kind of application. So once you'll see here is a number of cutting tools, a number of marking tools, a number of adhesive tools. That's essentially what you're working with right here. This is an optional, but I like it. I love this little contraption. This is a rounded corner punch. I'm not gonna do this, but you would enter a piece of paper right through there and punch it, and you'd get a perfectly round corner. I've used that in many a book, and sometimes it adds just a little bit of detail. You can see how it punches there on the bottom. I included it because the only reason I use it is for bookbinding. That pretty much covers everything on the table with the exception of some of our actual materials for binding. Now this is what's called a headband. This would go along the edge. Imagine this is a book. These are your page side and this is your spine side. Now this would go, if you notice, a lot of older books have a little bit of thread that you see peeking out through here. Now what that's used for is this whole area of your book would have exposed stitching. You would then glue this into place here, and it just adds a level of protection for those stitches. Obviously, a book moves and rubs, and you don't want anything happening to those stitches. It's not absolutely 100% required, but you know, it gives it a nice little finishing touch. Now the two last things that I want to cover are pretty big, so I didn't put them on the table. Let me go over here real quick. Now this is what bookbinding board looks like. Look, here is some that was in use. It has some marks and things on it. So this is what it looks like on the table. These are sold in pretty big sheets. It's pretty thick. It's actually called bookbinding board. It's made out of, I guess, pressed paper. But if you'll see here, it's sort of in layers. And later down the line in this series, you'll see why that's advantageous. Because you can sort of carve out a little area and just carve out little layers of it and then inset something into your book covers, which makes a nice little detail. Now the final thing here is, although I do believe in using whatever you find that you feel can work to cover your books, this is what actual bookbinder's cloth looks like. Now this is what, I mean, almost every book that you go into a Barnes & Noble and buy, take the dust jacket off, this is what's like embossed with the, you know, with the title of the book or whatnot. I'm not really sure what it is. It's cloth with a paper backing. I'm sure the paper backing is to accept glues better, and that would glue down to the board that I just showed you. And then this cloth is just heavy duty. If I were going to use this, I usually make my books pretty small, so I'd just sort of cut a section out of here. But if I wanted to use a larger section, you could iron this flat. These are the tools of the trade of bookbinding. Obviously, some can be used in place of others. Some of these are used in groupings for different kinds of binds. And in a traditional hardcover case, everything that I showed you today would be used in unison. Not all at the same time. You only have two hands. You know, just stay with me here. That's pretty much it for today. I hope you're enjoying this series. If you have any questions, leave them to me. Subscribe if you liked it. Do all of those beautiful YouTube things. No pressure. That's it. Roll the end thing. Goodbye.